Welcome everyone to Spore War After the War, our weekly analysis and retrospective series on the Spore War Actual play here on Dungeon Scrawlers that hopefully you've just been watching and came over to join us. My name is Jason Collins. I am a freelance comic book writer, award-winning actual play streamer and game master, freelance tabletop role-playing game designer, and I am the producer and editor for the Spore War series. You can find links to my work, my fantasy comic Thistle, and my other award-winning actual plays on my link tree at digital_Collins. And as the producer for Spore War, I am proud to introduce to you the Gamerunner for Spore War, Seneschal.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jason.
This is officially Book 1, Episode 9 of Spore War, so a whole bunch of preludes. Now we're up to the 9th episode of the first book of the series, getting very close to the end, which is evident by the stakes and the obstacles that are now in the player character's path, as people, those of the audience that has stuck with us and gets to episode 9 will soon see. And there was a lot of revelations this session, a lot of discoveries, and a lot of just dire circumstances. And so we'll just kind of jump into it. I don't want to spoil anything because there was a couple of different things in different parts of the episode that came to light. But I want you to speak to that, or speak to what you want to talk about first, because what stood out to you or what was most meaningful for you on this episode.
I really like playing with players who catch the hints. You don't have to spell it out for them. They absolutely, when we started talking about the Whispering Tyrant, they understood what I was laying down. And again, I won't go into detail on what it was, but it's revelatory.
It was there was revelatory for them for the plot, revelatory for them for a little bit of game mechanic, and the follow-up to our follow-up, because we've kind of almost had 2 sessions of just kind of reminding them and warning them and encouraging them to prep and prepare and be cautious and just protect their characters, because they discovered just how sort of dangerous, even after you've won the battle or survived the encounter, it doesn't mean that the danger's over. And this episode had that in spades. So talk about that for a minute. Talk about how they've heard those messages, do you think? But also if it's maybe now the realization setting in that there's danger at every turn, and that when you're fighting something like a spore war, it's not just the physical adversaries, the very air itself, the water that you drink or stand in. The water in the air itself could be your enemy in these circumstances.
Yeah. I mean, I am going to assume that players have watched the actual episode before we go into the retrospective. Sorry, pardon me. But if you haven't watched the episode, do that now, because spoilers lie ahead. I love how that last encounter in Zur involves you fight the big bad guy, and it's a tough fight, and it will leave you depleted. And he drops a couple of treasure items, and then there's a room beyond where you expect the real treasure to lie. And in that room is a lore dump, and no treasure, and a deadly trap.
I mean, no treasure, but they did get a pretty unique map, which they then shared with the with all of the gathered assembled allies back in Greenwood later in the episode, which was a great laugh moment. Just the horror of the map that they discover, and then the fact that they just whip it out as oh, by the way, we got the answer, we know what's going to happen next.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that, and that was just a funny sort of levity moment in the midst of
phenomenal moments in this episode for sure.
So the corruption spreading outside the borders of Keonan all the way into the country of Razmir, to the city of Zur, under the city of Zur, which is where they just spent the last couple of episodes barely surviving through that, only to discover that the corruption is not just spreading out, and it's not just spreading out from the Tanglebriar, it is infested Keonan in various locations, and spoiler alert, up to and including Green Gold itself.
Yes.
So that was really, really cool. And that, I think, for them was a bit of a holy shit moment, because then they realized that it was that literally that discussion of, we can't rest, we can't stay here. We now have to use all of our magical reserves to get back to Green Gold immediately, because there's danger there. Which they were,
And then they didn't.
which they yeah, that's right, exactly. And the fact that the danger was so readily apparent, but even they weren't in time to do anything about that.
There are a couple of things that I think were potential turning points that ended up not being. Banda, I think, had like 40 or 45 hit points at the end of the combat.
Yes.
And the damage from that trap could have easily been 45 damage. It would have been knocked down, not dead. But
Yes.
I did give them a cautionary note about not using the healing resources. We talked about that during After the War before. So hopefully I got through to them, because I can't do that every time.
No. No,
I
you've
think next time.
given them plenty of warning, and I chimed in as well a little bit on the game's Discord, and just giving them some reminders and some asking them some questions, things to think about. And at this point, you give them all the support you can, but player decisions need to be player decisions.
And I think your comments on Discord were great, and they were to role playing as well as character development. Fantastic input. Sorry.
Yeah, it was my helping hand to you, just to give them a bit of food for thought between the sessions, but also our instincts are very much aligned in terms of how we think as game masters, of course, having played together for so many years, and so we had both talked about the same thing, and I just committed to you that I will give them some of my own pieces that I observe and things that I'm seeing, and then you were able to do it very directly tonight in the session as well.
Yeah, and then I used the NPC as a sort of motivator. Like, you can't rest here. You have to go right now.
Yes.
They would have been so sad to go depleted into the immediate chaos in Greengold. And it's actually written into the adventure, no matter how long it takes them to get back to Greengold, whether or not they observe the exhortations to make haste there, this will happen exactly when they arrive.
Yes, which is a classic plot conceit that this that's, you want this to happen when it happens. It doesn't take anything away from it when it does.
In fact, the Pathfinder games, Wrath of the Righteous and Kingmaker, those games, I always found that a little frustrating, where you're like, they try to say, this is urgent, you have to do this right away. But if you do it right away, you miss half the quests.
Yes.
And so you just have to ignore that, except sometimes in those games you have to do it right away. It is a timer, and you don't know that. Some of the patching has fixed that, because those are, as you say, conceits of game developers and writers. And I, in my own generated games, I try to only instill a sense of urgency when I want the players to go in with reduced resources, or where it's important for the dramatic tension to have a sense of urgency, and not just all the time, you have to save the world right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I was thinking about that tonight in terms of how you described their arrival back to Greengold, and what immediately happens upon their arrival. I was thinking about that in those terms as well, and then also thinking about just in terms of how from a game design standpoint, how you write that in. And did they just describe it in the adventure path? Did they describe it very matter of factly? The moment they arrive, this triggers, and this is what happens.
Yeah.
Do they?
Yeah.
They don't set up a day in the life, right? They don't set up describe the mundane and the beautiful before you tear it all down, do they?
There's a hint of it, but I took it a little further.
Yeah. Which your embellishment was exactly what I was looking for, and I really appreciate that you took the time to do that. And I most of the time, most adventure paths, most written modules don't typically add that kind of color to the descriptions. It's usually just more.
I was impressed that they hint at it. They say, you see the familiar roofline of green, and it's a gem, and then it turns out to be a flawed gem.
Okay,
but I drew it out a little bit.
No, and yours was the right approach, especially to describe them being back in their familiar manor house, and the smells of the baking and all of those things. Like those are the little color pieces that if anybody who's a game master that's been watching this series, I hope that they catch those moments as well as little takeaways, because that was a great way. And even Steven commented during the game that he was expecting the carpet to get ripped out from under them, and then it seemed to be, oh, everything's okay, and he kind of let his guard down just for a second, and then you came back with the reveal.
Yeah, no carpet for you.
That was lovely. So
Yeah.
that was really great. And then yeah, from an encounter design standpoint, I love the fact that you combined at the end those two encounters, two very different grievous threats. But the fact that it's all happening all at the same time, and in my mind, makes sense because it lends to the destruction of the location that they encounter, that all that, and the chaos that's ensuing in the streets. It wouldn't just be a single nasty, flora-based type of monster. It's all sorts of nastiness happening all at once, and especially when it's the grand temple to Callistra. It's going to be like overwhelming force to just knock it to the ground.
That's right. It is it's a dangerous situation for them, but what I didn't do is have all the random encounters running through town that would have taken multiple sessions to deplete their resources. They get to dump all their resources to survive this fight.
Yeah. Which we've talked about before, and at least for the purposes of an actual play, is likely the right call, because you say the smaller encounters wouldn't challenge them; it would just simply delay them, or like you say, drain a few spells and a few resources, one encounter at a time. But it also eats up a lot of time for the game. Tonight when we had a few players under the weather and we were just kind of wanting to still get together and play and still continue with the recording schedule, but be respectful of everyone's need for a little bit more time just to kind of get away and go rest. So let's hit the key moments and focus on the most exciting parts of the story.
Yeah. I'm pleased with the decision. I hope they survive it.
Well, and as leaving it on a cliffhanger, leaving it on a nail biter, and in J. Dior's case, will he have any nails left to bite before we discover what's happening there? I thought that was a great place to end it. I liked your decision there to give them that one full round of combat, set the stakes. Immediately things start to go sideways on them with some rolls, and then say, okay, then cut. And so when you come back, they're literally right in the thick of it when they come back with no moment to pause. So it's good.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah, I'm
good.
glad. Thank you.
And then you made the decision, which was very much outside the norm of gaming, but allowing them to level up in the middle of the encounter to represent that passage of time, to represent other encounters, the things that they've bypassed. But they won't get the benefits of rest, but they will get the benefits of any improvements that they receive with that level up, which could immediately make a big difference in the encounter they're about to have.
I kind of I'm curious as to whether they engage with that as players and do it as a role-playing moment where suddenly, I think I've unlocked, I'm going to try this. I've never tried that, that kind of moment.
Yeah.
Rather than doing the first round of combat, they're like, this is desperate. I'm going to try this spell, this 7th level spell. I've never been able to cast a 7th level spell before.
That's right.
Let's see if it happens.
Yeah.
It happens that way.
Gwen is Briala unlocking 7th level spells. Like the decision that Gwen makes next of which spell they choose for this, because they're not going to choose a fluff or a diplomacy spell. They're going to choose something that's probably going to immediately be needed for this fight. That's going to be an interesting choice.
Except she might not.
Well, maybe not. But I'll be curious to see what they go for that, because there's so many powerful choices. But if I was in those shoes, the temptation for me would be to choose something that's going to immediately be helpful in this encounter.
Yeah,
agreed. To survive. Just because
I would do the same.
Yeah.
Something scary.
Yeah, exactly. So very, very cool. And now the war has come to Greengold. It came to Greengold before. It came to the borders. It came to the shores, but never really pierced the sanctity of the city itself. This cosmopolitan city of Kionin, that is the symbol of the Queen's hope and aspirations for what the country could be, and now the corruption's literally bursting forth from the very ground that they walk. So I like that symbolism a lot, and I like the fact that now their home is no longer safe.
Yeah. I think, because we're starting late next time, I'm not sure we'll finish next session. That had been my goal, but this session was a little short just because of illness, and next session our recording is, so we might need to.
Yeah.
But this last chapter is, a lot of it is going to be repetitive combat that I'm going to condense down, and then assuming they survive, then we'll wrap up book 1.
Yeah, it's always the furious end of just sort of encounter after encounter as all of the forces at play come to a head at once.
Mhm.
I'm really looking forward to seeing it for sure, and I think it'll conclude book one of the series on such a a great note for them, because they'll have achieved a level of skill and power that they had only dreamed of up to this point. Yet all
Yeah.
that skill and power isn't even enough to keep their home safe.
Or they'll have the joy of introducing their backup characters.
We talked about that today. We talked. A couple of them had their backup characters in their character generator, just kind of things they've been playing with, and we're
Yes.
like, yeah, but just make sure you keep that around. You just never know when
Yep.
that other character might suddenly show up on the street one day. So yeah, we had a good joke about that, but absolutely, it's. You've given all the warnings you can, and that's the cautionary tale we've been talking about the last couple after the war sessions. And now every decision is going to be fateful, from the spells they choose at level up to the resources they spend in the moment during the fight,
Yeah.
to the types of like will Lex as Banda switch up. Like they're kind of doing substitute damage type when piercing not being as effective, but they're able to substitute it with some of the magic boosts they've got. But will they change their tactics and do something different, or just hope that the dice are in their favor and keep sort of using a weapon that's not as effective as others because it's the best weapon they have at their disposal?
Yeah, I think that, one thing that will be important between book one and book two is, first of all, the opportunity to respec the characters if they're not enjoying the way they play, or if they want to re-optimize them, or for whatever reason. I'm fine with that. The passage of time and transition between one book and another is a perfect opportunity for that. But also the opportunity to re-gear and also spend some of their hard-earned treasure that they will no doubt have in their back pockets at that point.
Experienced gamers will know what we're sort of referring to, but for those who maybe don't understand what respec means, and the philosophy that we've had at our home table, where we've been very, very flexible, where you can respec your entire character every level you go up, because sometimes just the design you had isn't working. Lex talked about that tonight, talked about some of the earlier choices that she had made in Banda as a character weren't really coming to, either hadn't been used effectively and were just taking up feat spaces or skill spaces, or ability spaces, or just they realized that it wasn't going to be as effective at the level that they needed it to be now. Talk for a
Yeah.
minute about what you mean by respecing, and
Yeah.
why that's a philosophy that we've had at our home table, and why we brought that philosophy to Spore War.
Yeah. So and Pathfinder 2e does have retraining in as a mechanism. The idea is that in older game systems, if you took a feat at level 3 and then level 4 you find a neat, or level 5 the next time you get a feat you find a neat feat that has prerequisites that you don't have, and you have to wait until then your 7th level to get it, and then you regret having taken that feat at 3rd level for the rest of your player character's advancement. It's regrettable, it's frustrating, and it for new players, you feel penalized for not having known all of the rules and all of the feats available. For longer term players who are not, min-maxing or optimizing their play, it can be frustrating as well. And so we've always taken especially in recent years, but I think we've always had some flexibility where you approach the GM and say, I made a mistake in character generation. I don't want to die or have my character, or retire my character and make a new character. Can I just redo that? Can I respecify my previous choices, undo them? And I've played with game masters who are like, no, it's not in the rules, and narratively, how do we justify it? Our view is more practical, which is you can spin anything in the narrative. There are things that sometimes you can only do once because you got lucky, and so that manifested, and that doesn't manifest anymore because you're doing something else. Your recent training has been more focused on cleaving than on weapon finessing with light weapons. Whatever it is, no matter how dramatically it changes the character, a good GM and a good player can weave that in as just an explanation, and it's less frustrating. I really like that computer games, for example, have worked that in. Pathfinder 2e, to a limited extent, they have some things you can't change, but you know what? I like the lesson from Draw Steel, the new role playing game, where they have an actual class that can change what happened in combat, because what they're doing is telling the story later on in the bar, and they're manipulating what actually happened by telling the story later. That's how it's worked in. And it takes a mental shift but it really goes to the, I guess, the fourth wall aspect of it. It doesn't really matter what happened before. You're telling the story collaboratively. And if the story is that, no, we were mistaken before and this is what the character always was, it's fine. It works. It doesn't cause a problem. So flexibility for the sake of fun.
Yeah, and that's why we've sort of adopted that philosophy ourselves, and why we wanted
Yeah.
to bring that to the actual play, because we get a limited amount of time in our week to spend time playing these games, and the rules are there to guide us, of course, and to provide some structure. But when they lock you into choices and take away the fun, like why am I going to continue to spend time on this activity that doesn't that I'm not having fun at anymore?
Except when we do a one-off of Dungeons and Dragons Basic Edition, Keep on the Borderlands, where I roll an elf who has 1 hit point
Yeah.
and you die at 0 hit points, and you have no expectations of survival, and you don't get to redo choices, and that's part of the fun for that kind of play at a cabin on a weekend.
It absolutely is, and you are locked into that 1 hit point outcome, and
Yeah.
you have still not died.
And I have a backup character.
You have a backup character, I know, but you haven't needed it yet, because even with
No,
that 1 hit point, you still managed to survive, just through.
lucky as hell.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful thing, and it was a great reminder of us going back and doing that for this summer, to return to those roots, which I greatly appreciated that we got to do.
Yeah.
It was a great refresher of just how the old rules worked in that regard. Like you look at the past, always through those rose-colored glasses about, oh, this was really great, or this worked out really well, or that didn't work out very well, and maybe it actually did. But having fun with it, because we went into it with the right attitude, we went into it
Yeah.
completely open to the dice are going to fall where they may, as they did, way
Yeah.
back in the '80s. It was great fun to do that, but it was a great reminder of how those games are played. It was a great, as a bit, I consider like a palate cleanser for us, where we got to go back and just play it rules as written, and just let the dice fall where they may, and really see how far you can push your luck before the dice bite you in the ass. But at the same time, it's the perfect contrast to the type of gaming that we do now, where the player choice and the flexibility is so baked into everything that we do automatically.
And I think part of it comes down to the roots of Dungeons and Dragons as really a combat simulator, tabletop war game, board game type experience, transitioning now to a collaborative storytelling type experience. And all are valid. Both are still occurring. For someone who wants to play Keep on the Borderlands, that was the first gaming product I ever read, by the way, that module.
Mm.
I would have been like 11 or 12 years old. And but that kind, if you want to run through that and treat it like a board game where shit happens and you die and it's fine, you carry on playing with a different character, and it's all about just people hanging out and having fun. But that kind of easy demise has been run out of modern gaming systems because the collaborative storytelling aspect works better when you get to develop a character more deeply, and that doesn't. And yeah, the risk of death is, it's good to still have it,
Yes.
or even not, and just have the risk of adverse consequences. Death has as a consequence, um, is just one of a variety of consequences that you can have for adversity.
The
Um,
entire table for Spore War tonight, as we went off the air, all agreed and commented and kind of like celebrated the fact that you told them you took two challenging encounters to make one very challenging encounter for this piece, and they all loved that right away. So that
yeah,
like you said, that risk that's still there, the risk reward that's still there, the table really loves that, and that's, as you
yeah,
say, that's the tone you always hope to strike.
yeah.
But you have to build that trust with your players, and your players have to be willing to accept the fact that sometimes things won't go their way. But the greater the greater the challenge, the more satisfying the win, which we've talked about on After the Board before as well.
Right, and what I'm hoping for, sorry
Yeah,
to, but what I'm hoping for is something dramatic happens. I'm not hoping for a total party kill, but I'm hoping that they have a struggle and prevail and feel good about it, or I'm hoping that they have to retreat and regroup and try again, or ask for help from others. I'm hoping that something interesting happens as a result of making that choice,
absolutely.
or they get creative and really, despite the challenge, make it look easy because the things they're fighting are stupid. And they mentioned that. They said, if we didn't have the flyers kite the T-Rexes around without being in danger, um, maybe they're not that smart, they're just aggressive.
That's exactly right. And there's been multiple episodes of the Spore War series to date where they've come up with very creative solutions to some of the scenarios that they did. Oh, I'm captured by the guard. I'm going to escape the guard, but I'm not going to escape and go back into the city. I'm going to escape inside the manor house that I was coming to rob anyway, and continue with my robbery during a chase sequence. You know, things like that were like just really, really, just bold and dramatic and interesting, as you say. Something interesting happens, making interesting decisions, and this group has done that time and again. So I feel confident they'll rise to that challenge as well.
I will say something that just occurred to me right now, which is you can see, I think, in places where these players are becoming better players for having been involved with each other and with us. And I also know that I'm taking away things in terms of how they portray their characters and their acting chops that I'm learning from as well.
That was something that we probably touched on early days when we talked about doing this actual play, but talking about more about creative decisions and structural decisions in terms of scheduling and the story and the length of the adventure path and what do you keep and what do you absorb. But I think I always hoped that you would get to that point as well, because I had the same journey after doing a couple of actual play series myself as a game master, working with a talented group of players who then grew closer and their characters got richer as the story went on, and we got to do it in two back-to-back series. This will follow you even if we don't get to do another actual play for a little while, or if schedule changes and we have to delay doing the next book in this series or whatever happens in the next year. You're still going to take things away, not just for the home table, but for your role playing in general and future games that you're going to want to run and ideas that you have. Actual play is its own little unique beast, but you're super tuned in because you're getting that collaborative environment with these players who are growing alongside you at the same time. And it's really special. It's hard for me to describe without making it just sound fluffy and foo-foo a little bit. But if you get to spend any kind of time doing the actual play stuff, because you're making all these decisions at the same time, and you're often playing with people that are new to you, unless it's a actual play series with your home table of people that you've been playing with for years. But for many of us, when we're meeting these new players for the first time, you're building a relationship with this person alongside you're building your gaming repertoire with them, and sometimes really special things happen when you get to do that.
I'm excited to see how you and I develop as GMs over the next 5 years, partly because I think we're broadening our own inspirations and influences. For example, the Brendan Lee Mulligan's a hero of mine. I don't idolize a lot of people, but he has an amazing set of skills for running online stream gaming. And part of it is his improv background, his comedian background, but also he's just a very intelligent person who reads philosophy as I do and has really complex views on society and human interaction that he imports into his game in ways that are not boring, but actually increase sort of the spice of the game. And so one of the things I'm hoping to bring to our home game, our home tabletop game, is the pacing of streaming play. Because the avoiding boring encounters for the sake of the grind,
yes,
and focusing in on what's exciting and fun and getting to those pivotal dramatic moments and less dead air and more rapid pacing and energy, boosted energy, I think benefits every game. And learning that through actual play, and I've been slow to learn it because it's a skill, and like anything, I think people who look at the first couple episodes we did compared to now, I'm getting better. I've still got ways to go, but this is what I'm most excited about learning.
And that's
to the point of I'd like to take some improv classes and get that grounding as well.
Yes. I talked about it early days with you. We've talked about it once or twice early after the wars, but I warned you that once the bug bites, it's hard to that itch never quite goes away. And even when you're looking forward to the end of this series and having a break, you're already thinking about doing it again and doing it better. It's wonderful.
I really want to sit at a table, an online table with you as players. This is something I think I would really enjoy. I just need to make that happen.
I hear you.
Oh, I hear you. Isn't me too? Interesting.
That's exactly right. Read between the lines. Well, no, because what I was thinking about was the joke I wanted to make was that you just talked about wanting to bring that to the a bit of the alacrity and the efficiency to the home table,
Yeah.
I took that as a personal front that you didn't think that our 5-year campaign just to finish Age of Ashes was sufficiently swift and we need to improve.
Actually, I think we did a really good job on that campaign, and the pacing was better than any we'd done before. But we left a lot of room for role playing and
Yeah,
character type development and base building and political intrigue
yeah.
thoughts
Oh yeah.
and all sorts of other things that enriched that game dramatically compared to anything we've ever done before.
Absolutely. Uh, quick sort of segue for the audience just to understand. So we got the opportunity and the privilege to go to Gen Con in 2019, which was when Pathfinder Second Edition was sort of premiered on the market, and Paizo had their big, massive launch party. We actually got to go play in the Pathfinder Second Edition. I don't know what these just the events essentially where they had
Yeah.
a whole bunch of volunteer GMs that were there running games so that people could learn the system. And we got to do a couple of those games and had that experience. But we then brought it home back to the home table and decided to adopt it. And Age of Ashes was the first Adventure Path series that they were publishing as the game launched. And so we started it in 2019. And the small matter of a global pandemic and other events slowed us down dramatically, and we had to take a pause from it at a couple of different times. But still with the same group of players, still with the same home table. But we literally just finished book 6 of the Age of Ashes in 2025, having started book 1 in 2019. So 5 years, almost 6 years, depending on where the calendar falls, was a long time to get there. But it was truly a 1 to 20, which was something that I positioned or propositioned our tome table to say, how would you feel about doing this? Can we do this? Do we have the stamina to do this? Is there something we would stick with long enough that we would enjoy it enough to want to do this? Because I had never, even in all the high school years of playing and all the years in between, I had never had the true long form campaign where we got from start to finish and actually finish it off. And get to celebrate all of the advances and growth that came along with that. And as you just said a moment ago, we then not just did the 6-book series of Age of Ashes. In between each of those books, we fleshed out so much of what they'd given us, planted our own seeds, and then just grew our player characters into these incredibly rich characters, which at a level which, and I've said this to the home table privately and sharing it here for After the War, I've never had the pleasure to have that experience as a role player in all of my many decades of role playing, because no campaigns I've been a part of up until this home table had the legs to make it that far and had the creativity of the players and the fortune to have multiple GMs at the table to get us there, where we all contributed to a tapestry that just got bigger and bolder as it went, and is now something we can look back on and just look on with pride.
Pride and joy. I also think, and there's something, I don't want to drag it out too long, but I do want to comment on that game that we're just concluding this year. We've concluded this year. And comment on something else that I think is noteworthy, which is we pushed ourselves as players and we pushed our characters and allowed them to be developed by the circumstances in ways that we had not anticipated at character generation.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, my character, I played a female character, which I don't often do, and she was lawful evil at the start of the campaign. I did not tell the other players that.
Mm-hmm.
She was lawful evil in the sense that she wasn't cruel, but she was very selfish and very manipulative and wanted to be perceived as doing good deeds for the reputational gains and the prestige of it. So she acted like a good character, but her motivations were selfish
Mm-hmm.
and manipulative and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't actually care what happened to people. If she made a deal, she would enforce it, and that was her nature. And one of our friends, Tyler, ran a paladin and cleric of Sarenrae, a redemption goddess. And over the course of the adventure, without my having planned it, because I had an entirely different arc in mind for the character, I thought, you know what? This doesn't make sense anymore. The redemption arc and is more compelling.
Yeah.
For your character, who was an outsider and a loner and antisocial to an extreme, his journey was different, and he was put in a position where he was responsible for the well-being of others and had to take a leadership, ultimately lordly role
Yes.
and govern the Ekuje elves in the Mwangi Expanse because they needed new leadership as a result of incidents that happened in the campaign, and he was called to be responsible for others.
Yeah.
And reluctantly, because his beliefs are community and that sort of thing were important, but he'd been abandoned by previous communities and he was embraced by this one.
That's right.
Like his arc was not what you had planned either.
Not at all. Not at all. The overwhelming evidence for both of our characters of what the choices we were making, the impact those choices were having on the people around us, the NPCs, the towns, the communities, the villages, and so forth, and how that made our player characters feel, which I think is the sort of the crux of what you're getting at there, right?
Yeah.
That it was impossible for our characters to toe the line of the path that they chose, that to be hardened inside or indifferent inside, or to be closed off inside, to not be affected by those pieces and continue to walk their own path because that's what they wanted, because it was easier to do that than it was to allow themselves to feel change. And it was overwhelming. And yes, having this paladin cleric of Sarenrae in the party was a huge catalyst for that. But at each turn, when you and I changing GM chairs and taking turns running through the adventure, there was all of these amazing non-player characters that were these pivotal characters in the series that would either call us out, challenge us, implore us to help. And we would have had to make the decision to say, okay, I'm sticking to that alignment path and I'm not going to answer that call. But it's very difficult to do when your other party members who you rely on and are starting to now appreciate and consider them as friends are going to answer that call and expect you to do the same. And yeah, it made for a wonderful journey far beyond the confines of just what the structure of the Adventure Path series gave us. But that's why it was such a memorable experience. And it was the experience I didn't even realize what I was asking for when I positioned to say, could we do a 1 to 20? Could we do a long form campaign and stick with it? Yeah. Not even understanding what that meant for myself, let alone for the table.
I'm going to pause there for a moment because the alley behind my office was set on fire yesterday, and I had to extinguish it with a fire extinguisher before the fire department got there because they were delayed. And I can smell smoke coming in through my office fresh air intake, and so I'm just going to go check on that. I will suggest that we just pause there for a moment before we wrap up, if that's all right.
That's fine. You go check it out and be safe. And we're back, and sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire, but tonight, no fire, so that is a good thing.
Just someone with a wood-burning fireplace, I think.
Which, as the weather turns cold, is understandable for this time of year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, journeys of characters, the journey that our home table had, and now the journey that our player characters in Spore War are having as we get very close to the end of the book 1 of the series. And so lots of challenges remain, and the pace will get probably pretty frantic. And as you said, we might need to stretch out the remaining 1 or 2 sessions to 2 or 3, depending on how complex these final encounters get. Any closing thoughts for this episode that we just had, or this episode of After the War?
Yeah, I do have some thoughts. I have one thought in particular that I'd like you to think about, and then together we'll think about it a little further, and then we'll make a decision. My thought is the editing burden on these episodes is high, I realize. And I'm glad we did not do live streaming of these episodes in the first book, because I was learning how to do an actual play and the pacing and all the rest of it that we were talking about.
Yes.
But in terms of book 2 and book 3, I'm wondering if we want to do live so that there isn't the editing challenge. And then we, if there's a desire to do it, if there's enough demand, we can do edited versions as well.
Yeah.
But especially if I focus on, pacing and timing and keeping things moving, which is a skill I want to perfect anyways. What do you think?
Yeah. It's interesting that you suggest that, because I literally was having that discussion with a couple of the other creatives on the Dungeon Scrawlers channel today. I was messaging them today. So Eric Scott DB, who's one of the co-founders of Dungeon Scrawlers, and he is currently running the Paizo Abomination Vault Adventure Path series, but the conversion for 5e, he is running that with his group of players, running concurrently against our Spore War series at the same time. So there's lots of different great fantasy actual plays on the channel that you can check out. And he does that as a live stream on Twitch each week. So as is, he plays a bit of music in the background that the audience can hear, but the players do not hear. So there's no immersion for them, but they can do their own immersion, of course, for that. But he gets that live stream up, so it just goes up all in one night, and it's done. And then he has the recording, of course, that when you stream it, you record it. He then takes that recording. I think he does a tiny bit of tight editing just for the YouTube upload, and then it gets uploaded to YouTube at that point. So that's entirely possible. That would totally change my commitment in terms of the time it takes me to do this series, which I think is something I need to seriously consider anyway.
Yeah.
And what I have to sacrifice, and this is just pulling back the actual play curtain as we do sometimes, is that right now I'm getting to put in things like sound effects and a bit of just and custom music choices based on the scene, and I can go back and edit it, and I can fade out music, fade in something else, put in some ambience sound effects, all of things which I think really make the edited episode really creative and fun. But there's no easy way to do that without knowing in advance how structured the episode's going to be. And you could have some of those music or ambience resources on standby and just play them as you go. It wouldn't be quite as polished as it would be when I'm doing the whole editing raw after the episode's recorded. That's what I would just be sacrificing, which is not a bad thing. It just changes the nature of what the episode looks and sounds like.
Yep. Anyway, something to think about. It's funny. We both had the same discussion.
Yeah. Just because I wanted to know how quickly they were getting them up, and they've been doing live stream. A lot of their series have been live stream for the past few years. It's just been part of the repertoire that they do. But then it's live streamed, and so it's just quick and fast and gets up on there right away. Yeah. But it's also raw, warts and all. And so if there's any lengthy pauses or anything else, there's no way to edit that out. You can for the YouTube upload, but for the Twitch, it is what it is. And so mostly it just comes down to keeping it tighter and keeping it to like 2-hour episodes to the best of your ability, so that you don't have these lengthy episodes, and the audience is more likely maybe to stick with you for the whole thing.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thought. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, no problem. Anyways, that's all. I had a lot of fun today. I really liked how the scripted sending from their ally in Green Gold came as they had already arrived.
I know.
Spontaneously. I was pleased by that. I think though overall the episode went really well. I enjoyed it.
It was good. It was good to come back to it, and it's nice to have a quicker one too, because it will be easier to digest for the audience and easier for me to edit as well. So I don't mind. Yeah. Thank you for that. But like you say, next week might be the marathon one again. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, we're starting late, so we can't really.
No, that's true. Fair enough. All right. So once again, that brings us to the close of this episode of Spore War After the War. Thank you for taking time to join us this week. One more time, my name is Jason Collins. I am a freelance comic book writer, award-winning actual play producer, and game master, freelance tabletop role-playing game designer. You can find links to my work, the other actual plays I've been a part of, including my award-winning series here on Dungeon Scrawlers, on my link tree at digital_Collins.
And I'm Matt Fisher, Seneschal, and thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you watching.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Cheers.